Hi, everyone. Welcome into a new edition of Coach's Corner. We've got a little bit out of our region in the Kanawha Valley in the tri-state area, so we've gone south to the southern Coalfield area, and we are pleased to be joined this week by the head football coach of the Independence Patriots, head coach John Lilly. Coach, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you guys for coming down here. We read your stuff and we follow you guys down here a lot, so it's fun to see you guys coming down here.
Well, I've been following you for back to my days back at Metro News, and I've always enjoyed watching you guys and watching see how you guys built your program. So we appreciate the hospitality, man.
All right.
So to start, I mean, you guys have had a fantastic start to your season thus far. You guys have remained one of the top teams in Class AA. Just kind of start there. I mean, what has stood out about this year's team compared to the last two teams that you've had?
Well, I think the big thing with this team was we wanted to come in where we left off, and we didn't want to have to go through any growing pains, and because we had so many starters back. You know, we had 9 starters back on defense, 8 back on offense, got a quarterback back, which I think is always you're a step ahead when you got your quarterback back, and they've done that, and they've done every hurdle to get where they're supposed to be at right now. And you know, we played a couple of very good teams, and they've been able to maintain that standard that we're looking for and what you expect out of a veteran team. You know, so you know, when you got a young team, you know you're going to have growing pains. But you know, when you got a veteran team who's been to, you know, they've been in a state championship, they've been in 2 semis. You know, we want to play that standard, and so far, you know, they have.
Along the line of that veteran group that you have, does that make things a lot easier for you then whenever you do have such a senior-laden team that you don't have to overcoach or overteach as much compared to whenever you do have a younger team?
Yeah, I think so. You know, they know the system, you know, and they know what's expected, and you know, they've been in the games. You know, like they don't get big-eyed. You know, like first year we went to the state championship. You know, Fairmont Senior had been there for like 2 or 3 times. You know, and their kids was like, it's just another game. You know, our kids, you know, they're getting ready to pee in the bed. You know, it's the first time we ever did it. You know, and so these guys have been in those games, and they don't get overly, you know, they just don't get overly nervous with stuff. And I think it makes you such a better team when your kids know what to expect.
Yeah, kind of along that line then, whenever this group has made it to a state title game, they've been to a couple of different state semifinals in their time here at Independence, does that kind of help does that kind of help you guys in regards to keeping them laser focused on the goal ahead? Because obviously the goal is Charleston. You guys want to play on that final weekend that first weekend in December. Does that kind of help you guys to stay laser focused on what's ahead?
Well, so far, yeah. I mean, just really play. You know, we talk about stacking weeks. You know, and not pay attention to what's happening, you know, 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now, just stacking weeks, because everything can change really quick. This team can get 2 or 3 injuries. We can get 2 or 3 injuries. So let's don't get too far ahead of ourselves. Just stack this week, and then hopefully next week you stack the next week. And, you know, and when they're used to doing that and you don't have to preach it every day, it kind of helps. You know, it can be a negative too sometimes. You know, they get bored with the process because they've been doing it so far. You know, like these seniors have played 11 postseason games. That's a whole nother year. You know, so, you know, I felt like last year we got a little bit going into that last game of the year where we had that week off, if you remember. Well, we had an open date before that, so we had 2 weeks off. And I felt like burnout was starting to get there, you know. But I just think anytime you got a veteran team, you're a little ahead of the curve.
I know we don't want to look too far ahead. I know you still want to get through your regular season, but just take it from the standpoint of you guys have high playoff aspirations. You obviously have high aspirations to make the state championship games. But what's it going to take for this team to continue this momentum that you guys have had through the first 6-7 weeks of the regular season, leading into the playoffs, and even further on, making a deep playoff run?
Well, obviously, you know, you want to shoot for home field advantage. We feel like, and because we've been in those situations, you know, like in 23, we had to play 2 road games just to get to the semis, and you know, Fairmont got us. But the year before, we had home field advantage all the way through. And I think we found that was a better option to get that home field. So I think there is something to play for. Our schedule the next couple of weeks is going to be, you know, we'll probably decide that because we definitely don't have an easy schedule. But, you know, I think you got to have a little bit of luck. And most of the coaches that I've talked to, you know, that's been in state championships and won state championships, they will always say you got to have a little bit of luck, and that usually with the injury bug. But you know, I would say the focus for us is somehow, some way, get to home field.
What do you want to see from your team down the stretch in the regular season?
I want to see us be better. I want to see us, you know, have intentional practices. We've been talking about having intentional practices, like, you know, let's find something that we're not good at or are struggling at and try to get better at it. I think when you take that approach and you got guys, you know, like 9 3-year starters, you know, I think you got to find things to challenge them to do that, you know, and in the next 2 weeks we put challenge games there. You know, Barnesville's only had, I think, lost 2 regular season games in 4 years. You know, that's a challenge. You know, that's a challenge ahead for them to rise at. Next week we play, you know, a team that's got, you know, twice our size. Princeton's a AAA school, and they got twice as many students as we have, but it's a challenge game, and we know they got great skill people. You know, so, you know, just challenge them, continually challenge them. I think, you know, because I've been on both sides of it. If you try to schedule your way in, you know, somewhere that's going to bite you. You know, but if you, you know, earn your way in, I think when you get into the big games in the playoffs, your kids are battle tested just a little bit.
You mentioned a couple of minutes ago about stacking practices, stacking days on top of that. From your perspective as a veteran coach, what goes into that? And whenever you look back and say, okay, we just stacked a week on top of another, that means that we had a productive week. What goes into that evaluation? Well,
are we maintaining the standard? You know, like when you take a look on Huddle and you see who's been watching film and who hasn't watched film. You know, are your kids staying in focus on what? Do they have the capabilities of leaving the girls out and leaving the homecoming over here and, you know, not getting bored with this? Or, hey, you know, when you get into playoffs, you know, hey, you know, got to get ready for basketball, got to get ready for wrestling, but we got to finish this, you know, and keeping that focus and that standard there is it's easier to say that than it is to do that. And, you know, that's a struggle every year. It don't matter, even like when we had the best of the best, you know, the year we won the state championship, we had 7 state champion wrestlers also. So, you know, they're like, is this going to hurt me for wrestling? You know what I'm saying? And it didn't. But, you know, for a 16-year-old, you're like, okay, these guys are getting a 3-week head start on me, and I'm still in football shape. I'm not in wrestling shape. I'm sure that relatable with basketball as well. And then on the flip side, like last year where we had the delay, you know, so now some of these guys aren't even getting into the gym until December 13th. Now imagine that. I mean, they come off the football field and it's Christmas break. You know, and so now they're 4 and 5 weeks not into their winter sport. So being able to stay focused in it's so hard. But, you know, everybody thinks it's easy. It's really hard.
Kind of along that line, I thought that's a really good point by you. I was going to ask you this towards the end, but I think it's a good point now. Obviously, last year we saw a lot of different turmoil occur with, you know, all these injunctions, the pausing in play. You guys were a part of that just in regards to when the playoffs are actually going to kick off. I mean, just from your perspective, whenever you wake up in the morning, you start thinking about high school sports, what just gives you that itch that you can't really reach on your back, that it just irritates you still? Well,
what irritates me is, you don't know the truth, what irritates me is I don't think we should have went to 2-year contracts. I think we should have went to 4-year contracts. And the reason I say that was, this time next year we're going to have the same debate. It's not going to stop. And if you're someone like an AD coach or somebody that's been in the process, you know the fight's coming again. You know, this is just like, take a deep breath. We're going to get through it this year, but next year we're right back in it. You know, and you know, we put a Band-Aid on. We put a Band-Aid on it, but we didn't solve it. And I do think the leadership will be better. You know, in the SSAC, I do think we'll have a better grasp on it. But, you know, sometimes we don't have the principles that we had 30 years ago, you know, that are not really sports minded per se, you know, and, you know, sports is not a test score. You know, it's not an ASVAB. You know, it's got emotions and you know, we got to have people in the room that can see the betterment of the product instead of, you know, just say, hey, we're going to do this no matter what. We're going to stick to our guns, and if the legislature takes it over, it takes it over. That's where we were at. There were some people that I'm very proud of, and these were older guys that swallowed their pride and said, hey, we'll do this for now. All right, we'll swallow it, but they're not going to swallow it next time. So that itch is there. I don't think anybody's ready for this fight, nor do they want it, but it's going to come. And I don't think even you guys in the media, nobody wants to go through that again. And I think it caused hurt feelings, and I think we should have went to 4 years.
You mentioned something there I wasn't going to mention, but I think it's a good point. When you look at the legislator, and last year they tried to go after the SSAC and dismantle that and make that a part of the government itself now. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on the legislator taking that over and that being run by them compared to having a governing body within the SSAC that is approved by the board of directors?
Well, I think here's the answer to that. It's a simple answer. As a teacher and an AD and 35 plus years, anything the legislature touched, they destroy. There's nothing that good will come out of the legislature taking us over, other than they'll make a decision and stick with it. I mean, that would be the only positive thing that would come out of it. And I would like to see our board of directors handle things a little bit better than what they did last time. I really think the board of directors caused the whole situation. It really wasn't the directors. People want to blame them.
You mean the executive?
Yeah,
this what people.
Yeah, it wasn't those guys. Everybody knows that. So the answer is we can't let the legislature do that. As an educator, I can tell you 30 years ago, education 30 years ago compared to now, there's no difference. I mean, there's a huge difference. And so I don't think anybody wants that to happen. But if we don't get our act together, I think that option will still be on the table. And like I said, we're going to have good leadership. I'm totally convinced that Wayne will run the show. And I think, I think a lot of people have a lot of confidence in Wayne, and I'm one of those guys that it'll work out for the better. But I don't know if everybody's really ready for the fight again.
Kind of going along that line with Wayne, I mean, that's a guy that is familiar with the southern portion of the state. He was a former coach, a former administrator as well. Having a guy like that in that role, I know David Price was the same way as he was a coach as well. But talking about Wayne, having a guy like that can be personable with these coaches, how vital is that just in regards to that relationship between the SSAC and coaches in the state? Well,
I think most people respect Wayne in the aspect that, Wayne's won state championships. So when we talk to each other, we're state champion talking state champion. And, he knows where my heart is, but he also knows where your brain is too, So, you respect Wayne enough that he says, no, don't do it. You don't do it. Some of the other guys say, no, don't do it, but they're telling the other guy he can do it, and he tells this guy you can do it, but he's telling you can't do it. Then that causes animosity. Also, he's a true coach. I mean, he wasn't a coach that coached like 1 year of this and then got into administration. And, Wayne's been an AD for a long time. He was the head of the Athletic Directors Association, so he wore that hat, and he was a coach for a long time and, won tons of state championships at a small school. So he's wore that hat, and then so I think because he has that experience, I personally got confidence that, it's going to work out. But like I said, I would have rather seen us be able to say, hey, let's do this for 4 years and then reevaluate it, because everything fluctuates so much in West Virginia from year to year. It's tough. Like for us, we're sitting here with 2 games in 2026. Well, because you did a 2-game contract, I'm not going to schedule you. You might be AAA. You might be AA. You guys are good. Why would a small AAA want to go with a good AA? They're not going to play them. All those things come in your head when you're trying to do this stuff. And, with the sections and the regions, it's just so complicated. But like I said, I do think all ADs and most principals really respect Wayne, and I think he'll guide that a little better.
How are you different as a coach now compared to when you first started coaching?
Oh, well, when I first started coaching, I was right out of the Marine Corps. So, if you survived boot camp, you were a pretty good man. No, but I think times change. I think if you don't change with them, you're going to die. It's change or die. You see a lot of coaches that don't want to change, and you see them not be successful down the stretch. You see a lot of coaches in their mid-60s and 70s. They can't relate to the kids. So I think the change for me is I'm kind of enjoying the process more now. I'll goof off with the kids. I just enjoy being where I'm at, and I enjoy being around the kids. I'm still hard on them, but we'll sit down and eat a sandwich together too. It's not like the old days where, you run through that wall because I told you to run through that wall. Now, we'll sit down and try to outsmart them.
When you talked about adapting to the times, how do you think you've adapted? Is it more so just being more personable with these guys? I mean, you mentioned how you eat with them sometimes, but is it more personable? Is it more on the field tendencies? How do you feel like you've adapted with the times?
Well, two things I think we've done here really well is we changed our entire weight program 5 years ago. I mean, it's a total change, and we always were, power-based. Who can bench the most? Who can squat the most? And we went to a speed-based workout, and we bought into it, and the kids bought into it. And we brought in Mr. Stevens. He helps me with the speed. My son Max, who was Dave Walker's defensive coordinator at Concord, he come and he does all my training now because I've reached an age where I can't bench like I used to, and. So we've totally changed how we do things, and we believe in having fresh legs. Our practices never last more than an hour and a half. If it sometimes not even an hour and a half. It's just a total change on how we do things, and and we try to make it fun. I mean, we do silly games, we do stupid stuff, with the kids, and I think football is a sport that you see every year. When you look across the sideline, you see less kids playing, less kids play. There's a few pockets out there, but when you look out there and you see Bluefield with 30, and you see Fairmont Senior with 34, and where 15, 20 years ago you see 60 and 60, you better make it fun, or they're not going to come out and play. There's just too much other stuff to do, and so we try to make it fun. And like you see right here with the studio that we have, we do a lot of things with our own TV stations and that kind of stuff, and then we let them have involvement in it. They run it. So we do a lot of fun stuff. But the answer to your question is we've changed enormously. There's nothing. I'll have players come back that played for me 30 years ago, and they just look like, are y'all a Dairy Queen team? Y'all are not running 5 miles every practice. But that's where we've changed.
Going back to your team as we enter the latter half of this, but talking about your team again, who's been a couple of guys, or a guy for that matter, that's really taken that leap in their game from where we were a season ago to where we are now in the middle of October?
Well, Brock Green, our quarterback, he's we run a ton of RPOs, and we don't build our offense around one guy. A lot of people think so because we've had 2 Kennedy Award guys and 2 guys, one guy this year that's on the watch, in Sylas Nelson, but he runs the show, and he's gone from a freshman quarterback to a sophomore quarterback, but he leads the team, and that's tough to do as a 15-year-old, and the team kind of will go as far as Brock will go, and really proud of him, and then we got some other kids, but the answer to your question is Brock. Brock's his first team All-State quarterback last year, and he may not have the flashy stats that some other people do, but he's got the wins.
And then you mentioned Sylas. That's a guy that's been really productive throughout his career. But just talk about the importance of him to this program and to this team this year. How important is he to this team, and how far can this team go with him?
Well, the biggest thing with Sylas is I'm proud how hard he's worked. When he was a sophomore, it was like pulling teeth to get him in the weight room, and this year he is just, for the last year and a half, he's just been a weight room junkie. I mean, he's got himself to where he's about 6'1", 215. When you look at him, when he walks in, you see that, okay, that's a man right there, but he's an introvert, he's not that kind of leader. He's not going to come in and rah you or anything like that. He don't talk much, but he's a guy that I think Dave Morrison put in the paper, he's getting ready to have his 500th carry, so imagine having 500 carries, in your career. But he's had big footsteps to follow, Judah and Atticus. And at first I think it was overwhelming, but now he understands his role.
Well, Coach, good luck to you the remainder of the season. I know you guys got a really good schedule to end it, and hopefully we get to see you guys make a deep push into the playoffs.
We sure hope so. I tell you, these next two are going to be fun, that's for sure. But, that's why you play all this stuff. That's why you do all this work, to go play in games where, you guys are coming down and talking to us. And, it's so much fun. And our kids are – what you'll notice about our kids is our kids are appreciative. They don't get this stuff too much. And so when they get it, they really appreciate it. And I always used to comment, they don't expect a steak, they're happy with a hamburger. It's just a good place to be. God blessed us with some great kids, and we really appreciate you guys coming. Thanks a lot for coming down.
Absolutely. That's the head football coach of the Independence Patriots, head coach John Lilly. Be sure to check out our coverage from now until the end of the football season in Charleston by going to our website, wvgazettemail.com. Follow us on Twitter at Gazmail Sports. That's G-A-Z Mail Sports. And be sure to follow us on Facebook at HD Media Sports.